Welcome back to Sailing El Jaleo! This week we're going to go over the several month-long process of provisioning. Now, when we leave Delaware City sometime in the next week, I don't know when it's going to be on YouTube that we're leaving, but in real time we're going to be leaving very soon. And I've been provisioning ever since we got back to Delaware City, and provisioning is complex. And it's a little trickier this time because I'm planning on doing a 9-month run of trying to go unsupported. And I'll get into what I mean by that here in a little bit. But this is all about provisioning and getting ready for a long trip and trying to do it with no external support. I guess we might as well go ahead and get right into it. So grab a drink, climb aboard, and let's get going. First, I'd just like to go over what I mean by, quote unquote, unsupported. Now, obviously, we're not going on some grand polar journey. We're not in Antarctica. We are going to have access to supplies and services. Now, what I'm going to try not to do is I'm going to try not to stay at any marina at all on this entire trip. So I will stop at one. I always stop at Blackbeard's Cove Marina and Pub on the way through Bellhaven. I just need to stop and, say hi to Deb and see how she's doing. So I'll definitely stay there for a few days, but that's the only marina I plan on stopping at. Now, last year I did have to stop, I think 5 times in total on the way down. Now, and that was for power. It wasn't for any other reason. And obviously you stop at marinas to get fuel. And, while you're there, you might as well get water, since it's available. So I'll definitely need to get fuel. I'll grab water while I'm there. But I'm going to try not to stay at any marina. Excuse me. One, they're expensive. 2, they're kind of a pain in the butt to get into. And I just don't necessarily like them. There's a lot of people there. They can be noisy. It's a hassle I don't really care to deal with. I much prefer just being somewhere with just me and the pups, at anchor. So we're going to try and do a full 9 months at anchor with the one stopover in Bellhaven at Blackbeard's Cove. So that is going to be, we're going to try and make that our only stop. Now, we are going to have to get the water maker going, which is fine. I need to do that anyways, just to test it out before we do plan on leaving the country. And I don't know exactly where we're going to go on this trip. I know we're going down south, so we're going to get to Florida first, and then we're going to figure it out from there. Hopefully we can make it to the Bahamas. It kind of depends on the money situation and also the situation with the dog. So I will have to take the dogs to the vet to get some paperwork filled out, and then you have to sail and make it to the Bahamas within so many days of that paperwork being filled out. So I'm going to try and navigate that process, and if it's, if I can get all 3 dogs to the vet and get everything that I need for, say, $800 or less, then I'll probably do it just because I'd like to go over to the Bahamas and check it out. But if it's going to be too expensive, I think we might maybe just skip it this year given our tight budget. So that's kind of the loose plan. We don't really have a plan, just go south. And this year we're leaving a lot earlier. So last year we did have to stay in marinas. I think it was 5 times, and that was due to power issues. Now, I don't know exactly when I left last year, but I know I was in Bellhaven in over Thanksgiving. So that's towards the end of November. And we're going to be out of here this year by October 1st, which means the sun will be significantly higher in the sky. We'll get a better solar yield. And this year we have a functioning alternator with our DC to DC converters. So I don't anticipate power being a problem at all. And then with the water maker, if we get that going, then we should have a water supply, which will eliminate that issue. And I think we'll be in good shape. So it came down to trying to plan enough food for myself and the dogs for 9 months. Now, when I say food, I mean, obviously, if we have an opportunity to get provisions, like when we stopped in New Smyrna Beach for 6 weeks, there was a grocery store that I could walk to. It was only a mile away. I could take the dinghy, stay at the free dinghy dock, and then walk to the grocery store. Now, I love fresh veggies, I love salads, so if I have an opportunity to get to a grocery store and get some groceries, I'm definitely going to do that. When I say unsupported, I just mean I'm not going to stay in marinas. I'm not going to pay those $100+ per night fees to stay there. It's kind of obscene what they charge. So yeah, I'm just going to try and go 9 months with no marinas other than my stay at Blackbeard's Cove. One good thing about El Jaleo is she does have a lot of storage. Now, I did reduce our storage capacity a little bit by putting in the washing machine, but I'm hoping that because it's just me and the pups, that we can get everything packed in there that we need to. We're definitely going to be riding low in the water when we leave Delaware City. Now, I typically start provisioning as soon as I get back, so I did start buying shelf-stable stuff as soon as I got back to Delaware City. And that's especially these days because prices are going up seemingly every day. And I just wanted to get stuff as soon as I could and get it hopefully at a cheaper rate. And I have seen prices, especially on dog food, dog treats, almonds, pistachios, that kind of stuff have gone up since I made some big purchases, so I'm glad I got that stuff right away. Now, typically when I'm motoring or sailing, I don't eat during the day. I do eat, I just graze. Like, I'll have a few beef sticks, I'll have a couple of granola bars, some almonds or pistachios, and that's about it. And then I'll have one dinner at night. And on days when we don't move, then I just pig out and eat all day, so I make up for it. You can tell I'm not starving. The bigger trick was getting stuff for the dogs. Now, they've got certain treats that they like to have every day. They need, their canned, they split a can of canned food every day, and then they get their dry food. So it's just planning out everything for 9 months. And I did buy a lot of stuff online this year. Typically, I don't necessarily like to do that, but in researching prices, I had to go the Amazon route this year just because it was so much cheaper, and I don't like that, but it is what it is, I think in the world today, we're all feeling the pinch. So just to give you an example, at the marina, a gallon of Rotella, T4 15W40 oil is $35, and I can get 3 gallons for $45 on Amazon, which is even cheaper than Home Depot or Walmart. So, when you're buying this much stuff, you just kind of have to do what you have to do. The one thing I did splurge on are beef sticks. I did work in the food industry for a long time, and I've been in the Jack Link's production facilities, and they are very clean, and they use very good cuts of meat, and I actually like the taste of their beef sticks. So I did buy a lot of the Jack Link's beef sticks, and if you buy them directly from Jack Link's, you can go to their website and buy it. It's a lot cheaper than if you go and get them through a secondary source. So I always buy a ton of stuff from them. When I am storing the stuff away, I do try to get rid of as much packaging as possible. I put all the granola bars and stuff like that into Ziploc bags. It's much easier to dispose of a Ziploc bag, not that I dispose of them, but you can fit 100 bags inside of a used, Listerine bottle, for instance, where you couldn't fit any cardboard inside of it. So trash is a concern. You always have to worry about how you're going to get rid of your trash. On the Ziploc bag front, I do end up reusing all of the Ziploc bags like that I put granola bars and stuff into. I don't use them for food, but when you do change the oil, you need a Ziploc bag when you remove the oil filter so you don't get oil all over. Or when I change the transmission oil, they come in handy there as well. So I save all of the bags, I reuse them, so I try to get as little waste on the boat as possible that I'll have to discard later. One other thing I do have to be really aware of when I'm packing the boat, right now it is on the hard or on land, and it's easy to pack everything on one side or the other and keep it, all together. Like all the dog food is in this cubby hole, and then all of the granola bars are in this cubby hole, but you really have to be careful with the weight distribution. You don't want the boats listing to one side or the other too much. And on El Jaleo, all of the 2 fuel tanks are on the port side. So the boat does naturally like to list, I guess, to the port side, you know, when it's empty, because the fuel is heavy. Now, last year I did only have one water tank up front, and that was on the starboard side. And I put my extra fuel jerry cans and my water jerry cans on the deck on the starboard side. And that helped to balance out some of the weight distribution. And I did have on the starboard side in the storage all of the cans over on that side, so the heavier stuff. Now I don't have as much storage on the starboard side anymore because that's where I had to put the washing machine. So I'm trying to balance the load as much as I can on land before I get back in the water. And I might have to shift some stuff around, but here, like, you'll see me, but also at the same time, it's not like I can put all soft stuff on one side and then all hard stuff on the other, because these bins are so deep it'll end up crushing stuff. So I can't just put all granola bars from the bottom to the top, or, you know, like I have some honey buns or some, you know, some muffins or something. I can't stack those 2.5 feet deep or they'll get crushed. So on the port side, I'm putting in a layer of dog food cans on the bottom, and then I'm trying to put lighter stuff on top of it so I can get that base layer and then build up from there while trying to distribute the weight evenly. So it's going to be tricky, and I am a little concerned this year with having 2 water tanks up front, and then the heavy anchor that I put up there. That anchor is, I can't remember what the old one was, but the new one I think is somewhere around 60, 70 pounds heavier. I can't remember right off, but it's heavier. It's a lot of weight right on the front of the boat, so I am a little concerned about weight distribution. I'm going to have to tinker with it a little bit once we get back in the water, but I'm trying to do the best I can while we're still on the hard. I really love strong flavors. I love spicy stuff. Habanero peppers are my absolute favorite. I love the heat that they have. I like their fruitiness, their sweet, and it's a sweet heat. It's really good. I love habaneros. I love spicy foods. I love sour foods. I love acidic foods. I love curries. I like strong flavors. And back when I lived on land, I used to take a weekend or two and do all of my pickling for the year. I used to grow peppers out on my porch, and that was nowhere near enough to last a year because I put peppers on just about everything. Everything from spaghetti. You know, a lot of the prepared foods that I eat on the boat, spaghettis, chilies, soups, that kind of stuff, it's all really rather bland, so I add peppers to just about everything. I know adding peppers to spaghetti is probably sacrilegious to some people, but I do it. I like a spicy spaghetti. But anyway, when I was back on land, I used to spend a couple of weekends and do all of my pickling for the entire year, and I would fill up the pantry with jars of pickled peppers. And I also love pickling garlic. It's not something you see very often, and I like to dice up the garlic and pickle it. Normally, people, when they make a brine solution, they add water in with their vinegar, salt, and sugar. I cut the water out, so mine is a little more, the pH is a little lower than normal. I like the acidity of it. And when you pickle garlic that way, the vinegar actually turns into like a thick syrup. And it's really good for cooking. If you're making a vegetable dish with potatoes or something, that pickled garlic really adds a unique flavor to it. So I used to make 5 or 6 big jars of pickled garlic, and then, I don't know, probably 40 or 50 jars of pickled peppers, and that would last me the year. You know, salads, I always put peppers on salads too, and all of that. So I decided this year, you know, prices are going up, and you used to be able to get pickled jalapenos at the store for reasonably cheap, and now those are going up too. So I thought, instead of buying, you know, 20 jars of peppers at $5 a jar, why not just do it myself? And I've always wanted to try pickling corn. I knew you could do it. I've never done it before, and I've actually had pickled corn on salads, and it was really good. So I thought, why not make a pepper mix? And I bought a bunch of different peppers. There's a really good store here by my mom's house. It's called Produce Junction, and they have produce for really cheap. And so I bought, but it's bigger bags, like the bag of jalapenos is 3 pounds. So I mean, you know, you need to, you can't just buy 2 peppers. So it's, you know, a little give and take there. So I bought some jalapeno peppers, some cherry peppers, some serrano peppers, and I believe that was it for the peppers. They didn't have any habaneros, unfortunately, but I made a mix out of that with garlic and with corn. And like I said, I've never done corn before, and everywhere that I read on the recipe said you did have to boil it. So I boiled it first in the vinegar solution, the pickling solution, and then I just put it in the jars. So I always sterilize the jars by boiling them for 10 minutes. Then I put my stuff in, I put my lid and ring on, and then I reboil it for 10 more minutes. And the pH is so low in these, as long as the jars seal, I know everything's going to be fine. One thing I didn't realize before I started this project is there's apparently really hard water out here. You can see the white film on the jars there, and I didn't realize how hard the water was until after I pulled these jars out of the water bath. So I actually added a little bit of vinegar into the water bath, and that helps remove that white film. However, on the first batch of jars, there is a little bit of mineral scale on it, which, you know, doesn't affect it at all, but it just doesn't look quite as nice. And I hadn't done this for a few years, so I forgot about the pepper juice on your hands. And normally, if you're dicing up, you know, 10 pounds of habaneros, you remember really quickly that you shouldn't be touching the peppers. But with cherry peppers, serrano peppers, and jalapenos, it's a slow burn, so it doesn't hit you for a while. And I realized after about a half an hour of dicing peppers that I really shouldn't be touching them. So it came back rather quickly when my hand started burning, and then I was able to use the back of the knife and the spoon to handle most of the peppers. But unfortunately, my hands burned for a few days, which was a nice reminder not to do that. I did end up going with smaller jars. They're just little pint jars, and that's just because the real estate in the fridge is very valuable. And that's another problem with buying pickled peppers at the store. You have to get a huge jug to get a good deal on them, and I just don't have that storage room in my fridge. So by the time I was done, I ended up with 30 pints of mixed, some were just pickled garlic. I think I had 3 or 4 of those. Some were just pickled peppers, and then I had the pickled pepper, garlic, and corn mix. As our departure date approaches, it's time to start stocking up on meats. And one of my favorite places to go to is the Asian market. I'm not going to try and pronounce its name. I'll mess it up, so I just call it the Asian market. And they've got a bunch of wonderful stuff there. They're really neat. If you've never been to one, I could spend hours just looking at stuff. And I always go in there and I get like my ramen, my gyoza. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right either. It's just basically pot stickers. I love pot stickers. And also they have wonderful pork belly, which it's pretty hard to find pork belly at a normal grocery store. So I always get my pork belly there. This year I got 3 of them. It must have been, oh, okay, Hanwi. It must have been around 8 pounds total. So I'm going to portion that off. And then I go to the normal grocery store and I get all of my chicken. I like chicken thighs, so I get a bunch of thighs. And then I get hamburger, brats, lots of brats, and sausages, kielbasa, that kind of stuff, and start stocking up for the trip. This year, because I was going to try and go so long without doing any serious shopping, I decided to splurge and get myself a nice vacuum sealer. I did this for a couple of reasons. One, it saves a ton of space. Meat always comes in trays that are way too big for them. And if I can vacuum seal them, it'll reduce the size, and it'll also reduce freezer burn, so that's a good thing. And I can also portion it better. I can, brats come 5 at a time. I only ever eat 4 at a time, 2 for me, 2 for the dogs whenever I cook. And stuff is a lot fresher, or it tastes a lot better the first time you cook it. I'm not a huge fan of leftovers. So If I can portion everything properly and vacuum seal it to save space, that's just a win-win in my book. I also vacuum sealed all of my pasta, and that's just because, you know, pasta is shelf stable, of course. It comes in a box, it's dry. Once it's been on a boat for 8 or 9 months, you know, when you're getting down to your last boxes of pasta, it's not bad, it doesn't get moldy or anything, but because it's in a humid environment all the time for a long time, it just takes on a little bit of a funky taste. So I did vacuum seal all of the pasta as well, and I think it's going to just make everything a lot fresher. Hey y'all, there is another part of provisioning that is often overlooked, and that is basically having an entire hardware store in the boat. Once you leave, or once I leave this time especially, I'm not going to have access to a lot of things, so you want to try and bring all the spares you need and everything. You know, problems do arise, so you try and be as prepared as possible. You know, back here I've got coatings for every piece of wood on the boat. I've got different types of wire, all different sizes, pretty much anything that I would ever need. I've got more wire up here, it's kind of everywhere. Spare fuses, lugs, shrink wrap, I mean pretty much everything you need to do any electrical with. I've got a bunch of coatings down here, and I also have epoxy, which is at my mother's house right now, but I'll be bringing that back, so I always have some epoxy with me, and a bunch of spare engine parts. I got a bunch of extra fuel filters. If you ever have a fuel issue, you can burn through a bunch of those quickly. Up in here I've got spare engine parts. There are bolts, nuts, fan belts, gaskets, thermostats, all of that kind of stuff. Over here I've got all my kind of painting and caulking supplies. I've got spare toothbrushes. Paintbrushes, there's about 10 different paintbrushes in there. I've got tubes of caulk, tubes of sealant, stir sticks. I've got these graduated mixing cups for mixing epoxy and stuff. And all nuts, bolts, drill bits, pretty much everything that you might need. So it's basically a mini hardware store back here. And down here I've got socket sets. I've got 2 tool bags full of tools, box wrenches, you know, Allen wrenches, all that kind of stuff. I've got a drill, a cordless drill. I've got an angle grinder. I've got a multi-tool, and I've got spares for the deck too. Back in here I've got spare rope for the netting, for the dog netting. I've got spare netting. It's pretty much just trying to think of everything that you might end up needing when you're on your trip, which can be tricky. You know, then I've got filters. I've got back over here, I've got all of my carbon filters for the water system. I've got pleated pre-filters for the water maker. Those are 5 micron filters. And then I do have my water pitcher that I filter all of my drinking water with. That's a 0 water pitcher. I like those. And I've got 10 of those spare filters. So, you know, it's just trying to come up with, trying to think of everything that could possibly go wrong and having a spare for it. You know, I've got a spare water pump for the diesel engine, and now that I put in the water pump down here, I had to come up with a redundancy for that as well. So I had 2 options. I could either buy fittings and isolation valves and hook the foot pumps into the system, so if something went wrong with the electric pump, I could, you know, open up some valves and use the foot pumps. But that was actually more expensive than just buying a spare extra electric pump. So I've got a spare water pump in case that goes out, and I've got a spare backup electrical system. That's that little power unit over there, and then you probably can't see it, but up here I've got a folding 100-watt solar panel, so that's a redundant backup power supply just in case everything melts down. At least I'll have, and the reason I have that is at least then I'll have the ability for navigation. You know, I might lose everything else. I might lose the ability to turn on the engine. I might lose all of the, you know, fridges and freezers and all of that, and that's okay. As long as I know where I am and where I'm going, then I can get somewhere that I can get help. So navigation, I've got a backup for that, so that's a must. And as you can see, I'm still working on getting all the stuff put away, which is a long process. So yeah, you know, this boat is only 35 feet long, and you try and, or I try and think of everything that I might possibly need, and then inevitably you don't have everything, but you have to be able to figure out what you can, or you know, how to fix problems on the fly, which I don't think I'm great at, but I think I'm okay at. We haven't had any real problems that we couldn't fix yet, so yeah, that's a different side of provisioning. You know, a lot of times you just think about food and that kind of stuff, but you do need lots and lots of spares, and basically a traveling hardware store. And that's all we have time for this week. I would like to give a massive shout out to my Patreon crew. Without your guys' support, I would not make these videos. And my Patreon crew is Joan and Juddy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn. You okay, Wiegand? What do you have to say? What do you have to say, Weeks? You can tell him. Okay, okay. You pipe down. Fun. Life with dogs. Anyway, my Patreon crew is Joan and Juddy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn, Denise and Eli Sackett, Sherry Erickson, Deb Shaw, and Matthew Spotton. Thank you guys so much for your support. It really means the world to me. And I do have one... What's going on? Wiegand. Okay, you relax. You just calm down. That's enough out of you. That's enough. Oh, now you're in on this too now? Okay, you guys relax. Yeah, you just relax for 2 minutes. And I do have one legacy patron. Oh, the natives are restless. Oh, now you're in on this too, Hoob? Okay, you guys relax. Give me 2 minutes, and then we'll get some treats. Just relax, okay? Just calm down. I'm in favor of bribing children. Anyway, I do have one legacy patron member. Her name is Joan Lindbo. Unfortunately, she has passed on, but she lives on in our hearts forever. We miss you, Joan. If you are interested in joining our Patreon crew, there is a link in the description down below, and that'll take you to our Patreon page, or you can sign up, and that'll give you access to relax. Hundreds of photos and videos and kind of real-time updates that'll let you know where we are and what's going on, that kind of stuff. And you would help support the channel, which would be awesome. And if you do like our videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. That doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us out quite a bit. Alrighty, I hope you all are well, and we'll see you next week.